Alright, how's it going, you guys? I think this should be the final video in the plyInventory series here, and we're pretty much just going to be going over just some of the things to wrap everything up, like the blocks, the custom blocks that are made for the system, as well as some of the load and save system and how that all works. I'm also going to be showing you guys, if we do have time, hopefully we're getting this in under 20-30 minutes here, but if we have some time, we're going to be going over the scripts as well, and I'm going to show you guys how to edit some of the values that I have as default in case you guys don't sorry, in case you guys don't want any of the stuff that I gave you. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So I pretty much created a nice little demo here just to showcase the ease of being able to add items to your bag. Obviously that's the goal with all this stuff, is just to help you guys out with the ease and make everything nice and user-friendly for you. So with that in mind, we're just going to enable this little example called lol test. We're going to jump in and we're going to play the game. So we should maximize on play here. And yeah, you guys should see that. Okay. So we're going to hop in a new game. Our load's going to go. We're going to get in here. Let's go ahead and pick up our new item here. So actually we'll drop that for now. Okay, so when I enabled that game object before we played here, basically what it did, it has a lot of add items at slot blocks. So there's a cool little thing that I put together here for you guys that'll showcase a message. So if we press 1, 2, 3, it'll put up some letters, right? And if obviously you can make these out, it says this is in form of an L, this is in form of an O, and this is in form of another L. And this is specifically using the add item at slot blocks. Not the same as the add item to bag block, right? So obviously each one of these items work. You can consume them, our weight goes down, vitality goes up, drop, 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 drop. Oh, actually, we're not dropping, we're consuming. Drop, 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 drop here, drop there. I'll stack this one right on top of those, right? So, oops, I switched the scenes there. Okay, so let's look at the actual blocks for this test. So here, when we press 1, this is going to create our first L, this is going to create the O, all these, and this is going to create the other L, right? So what is this looking for? Well, it's looking for an item, right? And we specify that with this field in the block properties, not a actual field that we drag and drop in here. We drag and drop it in the property, right? So this doesn't want to be things that are in the scene, right? We want to make sure that these are prefabs that we're dragging in. So this is already linked to one of our prefabs. So let's make sure it's linked there, right? So we drag our prefab, drag our item, drag it into that field, right? And then we're good to go. Next thing we need to do is we need to look and see, and you can see the simple descriptions here. We're adding this item to the bag at the slot 0 _ 0. And that's the name of this now. Like I've said a million times, which you'll see in all the lessons and things like that, it's every time you use any sort of find at or find object of type or find this and find that, it's gonna have some sort of hit on the system. Now whether or not that hit is big or small depends on just what you're actually calling, and how many things it's having to iterate through in order to get to your object, right? So as long as you're not calling it constantly, like in an update, or you're not doing a bunch of calls all the time, it's really not an issue. It's not. Most machines nowadays can handle, even in the past, few years, these machines can handle these types of calls. So it's not as big of an issue as it once was. Even the get component method used to be pretty heavy, and that's been optimized now, so you could use that. So that was off topic, but yeah. So this is basically how this block is working. So in here we have our category called plyInventory. We're going to scroll down to that, And then you'll see here that we have the add item to bag at slot. Now what this is going to do is it's going to look for the player's bag. Now, mind you, this needs to be ran after the player is instantiated in our game. So what we technically should be doing here, if let's say this was on an on start or an on update, you know, we would need to do a check. We would need either do an A and B, or we would just need to put an if at the top of all these, right? And then plop in one of our players readies, right? Because our player does get instantiated into the game, and this thing is already going to be in the game, you know, when we start the game, and our player may not even be in the game yet. So always keep that in mind. We instantiate the player. We need to always check if the player is ready, if we're wanting to do things that are related to the player. Okay, so now that's out of the way, got all that done, so we can actually look at some of these other things. So obviously this is all basic stuff. Now remember, the slot initialization script that's attached to each one of your rows in your canvas, right? So we'll go into our plyInventory window, go into the content, go into the slot rows, click one of the rows, and look at the slot initialization script, right? Look at the script simply in here. It's not a big script. It's going to name each one of our slots until we've reached the last slot, and then it stops, right? It's going to name each one of those slots slot space the current row that we're on plus underscore plus the current slot we're on, and that's run by this temporary variable in our for loop. Okay, so that's how these slots get their names. That's why they get slot space 1, and the first integer is the row. The second, prefix here is just the divider, so you know which is the row, which is the slot, and then the second integer here is the slot, right? So that's how this is all mapped out. So whenever you're doing this, always know if you change how this format runs in here, you got to change what the format is in here. So those two are correlated. So not a big issue. That's that. So now that we know how to do all of that, we can pretty much just check out something else here. So disable that, and we'll just create an empty game object right here. We'll name it test blocks. Create that. Add a component, blocks, open up the blocks, do a custom update, flow, if input, get key down, and we'll do alpha 1. We'll go ahead and check this out. Apply inventory. Okay, so let's go from the top here, right? I don't know, we're not really gonna need to check any. I mean, most of these things are pretty straightforward. I mean, it really is straightforward, but we'll just debug a few of these things, because why not? Alright, so let's go back in here. So here, obviously, we're going to want to do something to check if we want to do on start, blah, 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 for players in the game, right? Because these are all, this could only happen if the player's in the game. Because our bag, if you guys remember, our bag is something that's on the player. And our bag holds the weight variables and the currency variables, right? So, weight, currency needs to have a player check. Slot and item, minus the bags here, if you're only using the spawn item. The spawn item doesn't need a player check, okay? So, what we're going to do here is we're going to do a current debug, and then we're going to get our current weight and our max weight. Max weight. Okay. So let's play this scene. I don't think we have to do apply game method because our player should just get spawned in. Let's go and take a look at our console. Get rid of the window messages, and we'll press 1. So our current weight is 0. Max weight is 75. Let's go around. Pick up some of these heavy items over right? So now we got some stuff picked up. Press 1. Current weight 75 and our max weight is 75. So it does look like we are maxed out. Put that over here. Let's go and drop some of these things. Right? So current weight is 63, max weight 75 still. Current weight 63, max weight 75. Right? So we're all good to go. Those blocks work. Pretty straightforward. Good little checks if you want to do custom stuff, such as, you know, adding, using the add item to bag. Now, the good thing about these blocks, which is a built-in feature that I added for you guys, is these add items to bag, add item to slot, and then, yeah, just the add items to bag and slot, these automatically have weight checks, right? So if you are using these bags, or you are using these blocks here, these two ones, you don't need to do any if current weight is less than or equal to the weight of this item minus our max weight, and if that is equal, or our max weight minus our current weight, and if that is less than or equal to the item's weight. You don't have to do any of that math, right? That math is already included in these blocks here. So all you got to do is just add item to the bag. If there's no room for this item, then it'll specifically say, okay, you know, since we're not adding to a slot, we're just kind of adding to the bag. And if there's no room in there, it'll say, okay, your inventory's too full. On our bag, it'll fire our bag full event, which is here, and it'll fire this event. Right, so it's all pre-built into there. So you guys just got to put the block in. Same thing for the slot. It's all pre-built into there. Now removing item from the slot does the same. You don't have to also remove the weight. You don't have to remove the, you know, all that stuff. You know, you don't have to do any of that stuff. This will automatically remove the weight of that item from your bag, clear the slot, clear all that information, and it'll handle all that for you. So you just got to use the block, you know. So yeah, this, you also give it a slot parameter as well. All right, that's pretty much those. Spawning the items is really simple. It works just like the instantiate block. So I try to keep it as close as possible for you guys. So you can specify it here. You spawn an item at a specific location, right? And if you want to spawn at a really specific location, not just a coordinate, then you can use the get position block, and then you can actually fill in a game object there instead of putting in a vector 3. You could also give it a rotation with a optional offset if you guys want to offset the item at all. So yeah, so you can apply an offset there at the end. So that's that block. Same thing for the currencies here. So we have the add currency, add max currency, setting the currency, setting the max currency, right? So what the add currency does is it basically takes what the currency is, right? And that's in our bag, right? So it takes our current currency amount and it adds that amount to this amount, right? So it'll do 1,500 plus 15. The max currency will do, you know, your max currency plus whatever this value is. Pretty simple. Now the set currencies are obviously just going to set the values, right? So let's say this is your currency amount is some default value, right? And you want to make sure that the player, when it starts the game at 0 currency by default, then you can set that. Or maybe the player enters this one level and his currency is, you know, he kind of just starts at this currency. Then you can use this block here. And then let's say the player gets a new backpack, right? Quote unquote backpack. Let's say they equip it or they complete a quest. And, you know, let's say this backpack gives, you know, more weight and more currency. So come in here, use the set weight. So we'll do what our weight currently is plus this backpack will add 15 more weight, as well as increase our currency supply by 2,335. All right, so pretty cool stuff that you can do with this, and then you can put these blocks in your like equip and unequip events. So when you unequip that bag, maybe you set the max currency to, you know, if you want to do a really simple system just to keep track of everything, you know, you can kind of just do a negative in there. So that way you can do that. Usually you would track these through variables and then just do a multiplication times a -1, just so the number's flat across the board, just in case it changes. But you know, options there for you. So yeah, that's basically all the currencies. These slots here, you can get how many slots are currently occupied in your bag, in case you ever want to check that information. You can get how many slots are currently open in your bag. You can get the current item, like at a slot. So if you want to check to see if an item's at a slot, you can do that. Or you can check to see if an actual slot is occupied. So, you know, if you want to do anything on that front. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, all this stuff is pretty basic. Mostly actions and just variables, one boolean here. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the only other blocks that I have to add for you guys here are in my to-do list over here. So the only other ones that I'm going to be adding, just that I can think of off the top of my head, is just the remove from the equip slot, adding to an equip slot, getting if an equip slot's occupied, and then getting the item at an equip slot. So it's all just equip based stuff, which I'm going to add in another update, probably the update that I send with the storage, because I'm still on the back burner on this. I don't know if I want to do a buyback tab, but I don't know. So it'll probably be in the same update as stackable items, storage, and loot chests. But yeah, so that's all the blocks. Pretty straightforward system. So delete that. So now let's go into the persistence, and we'll go in a little bit more in depth. We're about halfway through this video here, so we might have a little bit of time to go over just some of the custom inspector stuff that I've done for you guys here. Like if you have an item selected here, it'll kind of go off the same method as the creating a new game object does. You can just select an item. If you don't want to do like the renaming up here, or you know, clicking and doing the highlight thing, you can just click, come up here, rename it to whatever, and then click the button and it'll rename it for you if you want to do it. Sometimes that's more of a hassle, so I just put it up there if you want to use it, but usually I just use it for my empty game object. Yeah, if you are using the inventory system, this menu item won't actually be here, because this create new item menu is for the legacy version, right? It's only for like the strict C#, for people who want to edit the code themselves, and it uses enumerations and a bunch of other stuff, for the attributes and all that. So yeah, you guys won't have this menu here, so you probably won't have the inventory system toolbar, but you guys obviously will have the plyInventory whole thing right here. But you will have the toolbar stuff. And on the front of the toolbar here, I think you guys have already seen the transform additions that I've added. So you can reset the position here, you'll set to 0, 0, 0, reset the rotation, set that to 0, 0, 0, and reset the scale to 1, 1, 1. Or if you want to just do it all at once, do all of them. It's a nice little tool. Right here, I tried to acronym these as best as I can. I suck at some of them, to be honest, but you can change these textures to whatever you want. I left that option up to you guys. So if you guys do want to do that, just simply come into the custom folder here, which is where I've included my custom scene loader stuff for you guys, the asynchronous scene loader, and then my Toolbar Pro. that I'm also going to be selling. Just obviously, you know, don't resell this. That'd be pretty shitty. But yeah, you can hear inside here, you'll see all the features that come with the toolbar, and they're all categorized how they are up there. So yeah. Yeah, other than that, you just simply come into the GUI, come into the, no, not the GUI, the images, come into the, and I did include the PSD for you. And then just come to the editor icons, and then you can just take this and like drag and drop it into Photoshop or whatever, and just make sure the name is the same, and then you know, just make sure it's in this whole folder here, and then you could rename each one of these things here, and you can change what each one of these icons are. So it's, if you guys don't like my shitty texture work, you guys can change it. And there's also a GUI skin here to where it just works off the text right here. So you guys can change the text to whatever you want. Just come into the font, as well as the color. You just change the normal color, and it'll change the color of these labels up here. Yep, that's pretty much that. Yeah, okay, so yeah, that's that. So basically it goes by build settings is the first one. You can save your scene with this save scene button, and then it'll print a debug message to your console letting you know you saved the scene to its current location, and this current location is at this folder path at the time, at the date of this, at the time of that. So it'll let you know all your save information for this scene that you've saved. Then you can clear the console by pressing the CC. If you have something selected, you can clear the selection. If you want to create an empty game object, you can just click this and it'll create an empty game object, give it a name. And then if you have something selected already, you can create an empty game object, and it'll actually create it as a child. And you can create that. And it'll just keep going down the list of creating things as childs. So if you want to create empty, blah, 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 clear selection, you know, just create them in the root itself. So, nice little time saver. Now these are all the settings tabs, right? So if you were to go into as, edit, and then go into project settings, that's what all these windows are. So player settings, input manager, audio manager, quality settings, network manager, physics, time manager, tags and layers. Now these are the windows, so these would be in the window tab here. So this is the inspector, the game window, the scene window, the console, and you'll see it automatically takes me there. This takes you to lighting, navigation, animation, which is I already have docked down here, and this takes you to the mechanism or the animator tab. Yeah, and then this right here just creates simple primitives in the scene with a material, which you'll see in my models, or in the custom Toolbar Pro, and then models, editor, materials, resources. It just creates all those things with a base material, right? So if we come into our scene view and we create a capsule, let's go over it. It creates everything at 00000 with 1 1. So it'll automatically apply that material to those things. So it kind of just, you know, livens things up a little bit more, you know, so it's not so dull with the plain white stuff. Same thing. If you want to create a capsule or whatever game object, as long as you have an object selected, you could add any collision. So add a box collider, sphere collider, capsule collider, mesh collider, and then rigid body, all the most popular collisions. You could add anything like point light, spotlight, directional light, or area light. So here we can add a point light to this, it's just a component. We could add an audio source to it. Now these are all GUI related, right? So let's delete this. So let's say we want to create a canvas. We'll create another canvas. We'll create some panels inside there. We'll create a button, text, image, raw image slider, scroll bar, toggle group, input, scroll view, and a drop down, right? I created 3 of those. So you'll see here that it created a new canvas, and with that canvas that I had selected, you know, it created all these nice little things when I pressed each one of them inside of that canvas, right? Now the same rule applies if I'm doing this. If I have something selected right? And it has a rect transform, it'll create a panel inside that panel, and then create another panel inside that panel, or it'll create a button inside of that panel, or it'll create a raw image inside that panel, and then maybe if I click this one, it'll create a input field. So it's a very simple way if you want to, quickly add some stuff. If you're tired of right-clicking and going here, just simply take the slider, drag it to the left, and then you have canvas, and then all your stuff up here. So, yeah, it's there for you if you want it. And like I said, you'll get that for free when you guys pick this asset up. Oops. I think I have a bug up here. Whatever, not worried about. Yeah, so load save. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So hop into the IO test. Actually, yeah, hop into IO manager itself. Alright. So we got the script, right? Now at the very bottom is where you're gonna find the actual information for this. Just delete that. And I've tried to comment the code as much as possible for this stuff. It's just, I figure there's no point of really going into too much detail, just for the sake of, but I don't want to waste your guys' time and my time going through each one of these scripts and having to do all that, when I can just explain it to you guys in a video. So basically I was just deleting some of the leftover code I got in there. But yeah, so basically this class that we have included in our script here, we just make it serializable so we can read and write from here. So basically it's the class, and in that class we have some values, right? And it works kind of like player prefs, to where we can, as long as it's a serializable data type, we can bring it in here. So, right now we just got the basics. We got some ints, we got some strings, we got some floats, right? And then we got some lists, right? And then we serialize it all, we save it to a file. So this is what our file consists of, is the information that we pass into this class, right? Now you'll see here that I've named each one of these really simple, right? So each one of these functions serves a function, right? So this one loads, this deletes slots, this deletes profiles, this saves up here, right? And this just gets information, right? So when we're saving the game, right, we're gonna basically look in what our general save load path is, right? Which is the persistent data path. If you look at it, it contains the path to a persistent data directory. Now this is going to be, you can use this same string here, right, this static string, and it's going to be the same for all. Now the directories are going to change, right, because you can use this for Android and Mac and Linux and PC, and the directories will all change. But this code here, this one line of code, it'll work for all of them, right? It'll just put them in their persistent data paths, right? So basically we just use application.persistent data path and we give it a / so that way we know we need to create the directory in this folder, right, with this subfolder, right? And that's how we get the persistent data path, which is in local low. Right now it's in default company, because I usually leave all my projects just as default company, and then we go into my actual project, and then you'll see here that now this is the default directory of my stuff. Since my project's name is plyInventory, then it'll know to create a subfolder called profile, and profile is the actual name of our profile, which I'm sure you could see right here. So you'll see that it creates that profile name, plyNexus, and then our save file gets saved in there, right? So that's how that works. And then basically what we do with all this here is basically just we create the file type, right? So we actually create the file, and then we basically let the file know that we need to send it some data, right? So once we know that we need to send it data, then we actually start setting the data. So we set all those variables that we've made in the data to the values that we've been getting from our script and our game at runtime, right? So at runtime on update, we're setting our currency on this script to our player's currency and our player's, or our player's currency type and our player's current currency and our player's max currency and our weight and all that stuff, right? So this is all being set at runtime on this script, and we're sending it to that data, right? To this data class down here whenever we save to a certain slot that we send it to, right? And then what we do here is we're just simply iterating through and checking those individual slots and then adding them to our list of equipped slots, right? And then for here we just iterate through our bag, and then we gather all the items, right, and their IDs, and we add that to the bagged items, right? And that's our bagged item list. And then basically once we're done with that, we serialize all the information, and then we close the file. And obviously we have to close any files that we open when we're working with I/O. And we just print the message, let them know we saved a file to this path. And the loading works pretty similar. We simply just got to open up the file again. First we want to make sure that that file does exist, obviously, so we don't get no errors. And once we know it does exist, then we open up that file at that path. Let the data know it needs to be deserialized so we can pull the data from it. And then we just need to close the file, and then because we already got the information, right? So now we just need to say, okay, set now our player's information to whatever was contained inside that data, right? And then set on our loader, which is the thing that's actually going to load the stuff. We would just want to clear it out just in case if it has any leftover information. And we want to just basically add all the stuff that we currently need it to contain, right? And then we actually fire the events inside of that loader that pertain to each of the things, which is equipable and bagged items. And then we just let the player know that we did load. Delete slot, pretty straightforward, and delete profile, very straightforward, just using directory. It's really, really simple. So yeah, that's pretty much the load save in a nutshell. I'll go ahead and open up the loader just so you guys can kind of get a view of how that actually works, and how I actually went about just looking at how do I want to set the XML database up, right? So we'll look at how I set the database up, and then we'll also look at the loader. And then after I'm done with this, we're just going to wrap this video up, and then that should conclude this first release of the videos here. So the database, how it's set up, is obviously, we'll just open that back up again. The database is obviously set up like this, right? It's set up with, we name the collection, we let it know it contains items, and then we actually let it know that we are containing items, and we now have to set each item that it does contain. So now we're looking for an ID, right? So an item, ID, and then we're just looking for a name. So in the attributes that we're looking for that make up this XML is the XML attribute, which is an ID, and the XML element, which is called name, right? So that's how we get the ID up here, and that's how we get name below it, right? So this is attribute, that's the element. ID is the attribute, this is an element. That's why the attribute's at the top, and the name is enclosed inside of the attribute. Okay. Now for the loader, like we said, when we're saving, we're good. We save it to the file. That's all set. Now when we're loading, we actually need to talk to the loader, right? And the loader is actually on the same object. So we have the manager, which is what we just looked at, and the loader is right below it, right? Pretty simple. So the loader is basically just checking, move that database over. The loader is basically checking, okay, this is what's getting set to what we have to load in from our player, right? We got references, all the stuff we need. Okay. Now, when we do this, we need to have a few iterations going on here, right? First, we need to get our database, right? And we need to load it. So that way we know what our database has. And then we can iterate through our database, with this for loop, right? And then our check is the if. So we're iterating with the for loop, and then we're checking with this if statement. And so we're checking the database, right, for the items, and if any of the items that we've hit have an ID of what item that we're currently trying to load, right, when we're iterating, then go ahead and instantiate that item with a resources.load, whatever that item's ID is, plus underscore plus item name. So remember what I told you guys about making sure your items' names are correct, right? So let's go ahead and check out one of our items. So we go to prefabs right here. So it's going to instantiate. Let's look at one that has a better, a simpler name convention. Look at our axe. All right, so it's going to come into our loader. It's going to load the ID of this item that it is hit plus underscore plus the name. So it's going to load, it's going to look for our resources folder and look to instantiate something that has an ID underscore name that's pertinent to what we have saved in our list. And that's why we go through the setup of putting in the item ID, then the prefix, then the name, because that's how we do it when I do the resources load. So I'm kind of just teaching you guys the way that I do it to do it this way, right? So that's how this works here. And then we just set its, vector 3 and rotation to nothing, right? And then we just make sure it's name, so we don't have that clone issue that gets added to the game objects. We just reset its name to what its name is in the database. And then we let them know that we did this. And then as long as we have more items to load, then we want to fire this function again and then keep loading items until we have no more items to load. And this happens about in a few frames, so it happens almost instantly. Right, so then we just basically are, you'll see here I tagged each one of these to let you know which one is for iterating through the equipped items, and then which one is actually made for iterating through the bagged items. So for bagged items, we just iterate through our inventory bagged slots, and then grab each one of our slots, let us know, okay, we do have these specific open slots. Go ahead and add these items to these slots. And usually when we're loading in a game, since we have a canvas in each one of our scenes, the canvas is going to be fresh anyway. So there should be no items in those slots because it's technically a brand new canvas. So that's why it's just a fail-safe that I do. I do this when I do my item pickups. When I do my item pickups. So I just like to do iteration here just so it's kind of like a fail-safe type thing for me, and it helps me keep track of how I handle all my stuff. So how you see it here is basically the same of how I handle it through all my other systems. So you'll see it reflect all throughout the whole system. So yeah, it's pretty much it. It's very straightforward. If you guys have any detailed questions or you guys need me to add certain things, if you're not comfortable adding it yourself, certain things that you guys want to save, or if you modify the scripts and you need me to save things that you modified, just let me know. I'll give you guys another rundown of this and show you how to add, your data types to the saving and loading system. But Plygame should handle all the Plygame related stuff for you guys. So yeah, other than that, just look forward to these features here, and then me adding these blocks, in a future update. So yeah, you guys, thanks for watching. I hope you guys enjoy the system. Give me your feedback on it, and yeah, just let me know on the forums if you guys have any issues. Have a good one.